Welcome to the Centre for Brexit Studies YouTube channel. Today we're joined by Centre researcher David Hearne. Now, as you can see, it's a bit of a different background for the both of us today. This is due to us working from home because of the ongoing COVID-19 uncertainty, which we will, of course, be discussing in this video. So on that note, David, this whole situation is going at such a speed, with actions and advice changing daily. How are you personally dealing with this and the lifestyle changes that we're all having to make?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's been a pretty crazy couple of weeks, actually. Obviously, we started out not very long ago at all. This was sort of thought of as something on the other side of the world, and it wasn't having this huge impact on our daily lives. Obviously, we were concerned about colleagues, friends, and students in China in particular. And elsewhere in East Asia. And very quickly, this has escalated to become a European crisis as well. So we've all been advised to work from home insofar as possible. The university is obviously taking all steps to try and protect the health of its staff and students. And in both of our cases, obviously, this involves some changes in our jobs, working from home and having to record this remotely. So it's obviously everything's changed, and you know, for me, it's a big lifestyle shift. I've got a very young baby at home, so juggling all of that outside of an office environment is challenging. But you know, we make the best of what we've got, and hopefully carry on working and see us all through this period.
So today alone, UK MPs have been told to stay out of the Commons chamber. Many supermarkets are limiting sales of food items, and the global coronavirus cases have passed 200,000. Is this what we can expect for a few weeks, or are we looking more like months here?
Well, it's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, who knows? The whole situation is moving incredibly quickly. Certainly everything that I've seen on the news from epidemiologists and all the rest of it seems to indicate that this is a crisis that could last for some months, that it's not going to be over really quickly. Obviously, a lot of us have friends and family who've been affected by this, if not directly because of the disease itself, then certainly indirectly through its economic effects. Anyone working in hospitality is obviously affected. Anyone working in the travel industry is obviously affected. And you know, as for those of us who don't work in those industries, we're affected in our own way, as you can see by the background behind me. So yeah, this looks like it's something that we're in for the long haul. The scenes in supermarkets have been absolutely crazy. My jaw has kind of dropped as we've been shopping over the weekend. It's unbelievable seeing all these empty shelves. Yeah, so I hope that side of things will pass quite quickly. As you know, once people have bought stuff and stockpiled, presumably you don't need to buy 6 months of toilet roll every day. But the wider changes that are going to have to last for some time, I guess.
And so last night, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has unveiled a £350 billion lifeline for the economy. Do you think this will actually be enough to support UK businesses, especially those who, like you said, you know, restaurants and bars, the sort of businesses that could actually go bump throughout this process? Or do you think we can expect this figure to rise significantly?
Oh, I think the figure's going to go up. Certainly. I mean, it depends on how long everything goes on for. It depends how long the kind of complete and total shutdown in many ways of large swathes of the British economy, depends how long that lasts. Certainly if it lasts as long as some people are talking about, a year or more, then that figure is going to have to increase dramatically. Yeah. I think it compares quite favourably with some of the other figures that have been bandied about worldwide. The US, of course, is talking about $1 trillion infusion into the economy. But actually, when you look at the size of the UK economy compared to the US economy, the UK stimulus is probably bigger as a percentage of economic output. So there's two issues, I guess. One is one is not just about size, but about speed. How quickly we can get this money into the hands of businesses that actually need to repay money now. How quickly we can sort that to stop otherwise viable firms going under. And perhaps more importantly in some ways, to stop the kind of widespread unemployment and widespread massive economic dislocation that goes along with that. Can we act fast enough, and how can we act fast enough? From an economic perspective, we need to think very carefully what channels we can activate and how quickly we can do them. The second issue, obviously, is as time goes on, the scale of intervention needed is going to go up. There's no question about that. The government will have to continue to intervene in the economy in a way that perhaps we haven't seen since the 1940s. We're going to move very, very, very quickly a long way away from our current laissez-faire way of dealing with things, I think. That's just that's necessary. Whatever your political perspective, that's a necessary byproduct of the crisis. And the final point is, okay, how do we plug the holes that we still have in the social safety net? How do we plug the holes that are going to lead to people to take undue risks so that they can feed themselves? You know, we've got stories of people like Deliveroo, people working for Deliveroo, gig economy workers. I know my colleague Professor De Ruyter has spoken quite extensively about this, but there's also a wide spectrum of people who actually are going to really struggle. Statutory sick pay is not enough to live on, really, not for any period of time. So again, we need to think very carefully about how we can intervene in a targeted manner to cover those groups who perhaps have hitherto not been covered. And it could mean a long-term wholesale change in the British welfare state and how it functions.
And as we probably expected, Brexit talks are obviously on hold. What could COVID-19 actually do to the Brexit process? And do you think all of this actually makes a hard Brexit more likely?
Yes and no, I suppose is the honest answer to that. And all of this comes with the caveat that Brexit was a fairly fast-moving and slightly chaotic process to start with. What's going on with COVID-19 and the dramatic change that we've seen in Europe to our way of life and will continue to see, it is happening even more quickly. The whole thing is just on steroids. This dwarfs. Certainly the potential scale of this dwarfs the potential scale of upheaval due to Brexit, although it will probably be felt over a shorter time horizon, at least to begin with. The questions are, will the government accept that actually this is a force majeure event? This is something that nobody could have foreseen. None of us imagined for 1 second when the withdrawal agreement was put together that an isolated case of species to species jump in an infection in Hearne in December, probably December, that's what we think, would suddenly morph into a global pandemic that's confined us all to our houses virtually, and it has made face-to-face negotiations impossible, and rightly so, has pushed Brexit way down the agenda of politicians and policymakers alike. And actually, in such an environment, the obvious thing to do is to prolong the status quo ante, the transition period, if you like. The problem, obviously, is the political ramifications of doing that. You know, Boris Johnson has put a huge political stake in the ground, saying we're going to leave at the end of this year. But I think all of us suddenly feel that Brexit perhaps isn't quite as much of a totemic event, or at least some of the emotions been taken out of it. You know, we're now witnessing a pandemic that could kill thousands and thousands. You know, that has the potential to kill those of us who, you know, our nearest and dearest. You know, parents and grandparents. And perhaps that allows him to put Brexit into a bit more perspective and say, hang on a second, let's just delay things a little while we clear this up. And then we can get back to the negotiating table, and then we can get back to the drawing board and deal with the longer run economic effects of Brexit and all the rest of it, and decide how we're going to act in that regard. I don't know. That would be my take on it. Obviously, if he carries on regardless, then we will leave the EU with no deal at the end of the year, and that's that.
Thanks for joining me, David, and obviously to those watching, we wish you all the best during this incredibly worrying and uncertain time.